So welcome back, everybody, to our latest episode of The Nest. After a very eventful wildcard weekend, we are back once again to preview the divisional round matchups in the NFL. And joining me for today's episode are Ujan Talukdar and Rohan Venkatesh, and hopefully a Nirvan Chakraborty at some point later today. How's everyone doing?
It's good to be here. Good to have Ujan back on the show. And not another week as we see the playoffs narrowing down. So always fun to see that. Got some good matchups and looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it's finally good to be back. I've a lot has happened since I was last on, from for personal reasons and whatnot. But it's good to be back, and here we are for another weekend of exciting playoff football. Hopefully.
Yep, definitely. So we're just going to start in order. So we're going to go with the first matchup of the week, which is going to be Saturday, Jaguars at Chiefs, 4:30 p.m. at Arrowhead Stadium. So very interesting matchup. The Jaguars had an absolutely amazing comeback against the Chargers last Saturday, 31-30. They were down 27-0, and the Chargers basically imploded at the end. And this is all actually be a rematch of Week 10 when the Chiefs beat the Jaguars 27-17. At the time, the Jaguars were 3-7. So they ended up going from 3-7 all the way to 9-8, and they've actually been 10-8, I guess, with the playoff win. So it's a very impressive matchup. But this is going to be the first matchup of the week, and for me, it's going to be interesting because I think obviously Trevor Lawrence, he had a massive performance. I mean, a horrible first half, 4 interceptions, but then he made it up in the second half. 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions overall. Turned it over 5 times, actually. The Jaguars turned it over 5 times, but still won, which is incredible. So, and then also the big time 4th and 1 call by Doug Peterson, where he had 3 running backs lined up behind Lawrence, and ETN got the first down and then some, because that made it a very easy game-winning field goal attempt by Riley Patterson, the kicker. So that was a big matchup, and I think let's just talk about this one. So Ujan, what are your keys to the game? Do you think Jacksonville has a chance to head to the AFC Championship game?
Yeah, I absolutely think they do. I mean, you never thought they would make it in 2017, right? When they beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, for that matter, and everyone expected it would be like a Pittsburgh New England AFC Championship game at Gillette Stadium, but Jacksonville had other ideas. And even then they put up a good fight, but that's now 5 years in the past now. So I think Trevor Lawrence, the year 1 to year 2 jump has been great. I mean, of course, it's a long regular season now, and it didn't really look that great considering how well Tennessee was doing, and Jacksonville went on a late season surge, coupled with a Tennessee collapse, essentially, right? So it didn't really look good in the playoff game. I mean, I think nerves were definitely a factor because for Trevor Lawrence, especially, it was his first playoff game. Same goes for Justin Herbert, but I think I certainly trusted the Chargers offense to score a lot of points, which they did. But I guess it took a while for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars to get going in the game, and I thought it was more impressive than the 28-3 comeback. I mean, that's saying something. I mean, that's me being a Patriots fan, considering how many times Jacksonville turned the ball over. You just never really thought there was a chance, and I think that
objectively it was a bigger comeback. So
yeah, well, granted, the touchdown before halftime definitely got Jacksonville some momentum going in. I think if it was 27-0, maybe they'd fall a little bit short. So I think for me, it's a matter of I think Trevor Lawrence needs to have a really good game, and I think the best way for the best that Jacksonville can hope for is a shootout against KC, because Kansas City is going to score a lot of points, and will Jacksonville be able to match that? So I think it's Trevor Lawrence against the Kansas City defense at GEHA Field.
Yeah, and the last time Lawrence played the Chiefs, actually it was 5 sacks he had, and he did throw 2 touchdowns with no interception, so he did avoid the turnover then. But overall, that Week 10 matchup was, I look back at that game, and overall, Lawrence kind of struggled overall, but it was semi-competitive, 27-17. Mahomes had 4 touchdowns. Travis Kelce had 6 catches, 81 yards. He's going to be the key player for the Jaguars defense to zone in on, because I mean he's basically Mahomes' go-to target, especially with Tyreek Hill now in Miami. Travis Kelce is basically a Mahomes' security blanket, and that's basically going to be the player. Like the Jaguars defense needs to double Kelce and really force him to go to Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have other playmakers, but Kelce's the main one, and they really need to like double Kelce or really limit his impact, because Kelsey's capable of torching you for like 3 touchdowns at 150 yards. He is that good.
Mahomes is increasingly reliant on Kelce, especially after like losing Tyreek Hill after the end of last season. But the way I kind of see this matchup, on paper, it's a ginormous, not just a little bit, it's a ginormous advantage for the Chiefs. Obviously, they are the number 1 seed in the AFC for a reason. They're coming off a bye week. Normally, I mean, sometimes teams get rusty when they're coming off of a bye week, but I don't think that's going to be the case for the Chiefs. They got, I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is a superstar. He is, and on average, Kansas City has 297.8 passing yards per game, which is the league. And if you look at the Kansas City offense overall, they score a league leading 29.2 points per game on average. Compare that to Jacksonville, which places 9th in that category at 24.2 points per game. The defenses are a little bit more comparable. They're 12th and 16th respectively. Jags are slightly better defensively, but if you look at the number of opponent points allowed, it's 21.1 and 21.7. So not really much of a disparity over there. But I would have to say, I would definitely have to say that the Mahomes Travis Kelce partnership is gonna be key. I mean that pair has produced 12 TD catches during the season, and I would have to say that the advantages for Kansas City aren't coming out of nowhere. They're definitely the much stronger team. So it's only natural to think that they would have a ginormous advantage. But that said, don't discount the Jaguars. As Ujan mentioned, they kind of have found ways of coming back in games when they really shouldn't be in it. Now maybe that's a testament to the Jags and what they're made of. Obviously, I mean, 5 years ago they as Ujan mentioned, they beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. But of course, this time, just the massive comeback that they had, they got to be riding on that kind of energy, especially after coming back against an opponent like the Chargers. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of a moment to gloat over here because that's I did predict the Jags over the Chargers when Amartya and Anirban didn't. That said, I went 3-3 in the wild card picks. So,
yeah, I think Anirban picked the Chargers too. I did pick the Jaguars, but I.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. I'll give Amartya credit.
I picked the Jaguars. Sorry, I picked the Chargers.
But anyway,
no, I picked the Chargers to win. Anirban picked the Jaguars though.
My picks kind of balanced out because I picked the Jags, who were underdogs to win, and of course they did. But I went wrong a couple of other times. I went wrong on the Giants Vikings game, and then I also went wrong on the
Cowboys
Bengals Vikings game, and of course the Cowboys Buccaneers game. All of us got that one wrong. All of us did. So I got to point that out as well. I'll point out when we're right. I'll also point out when we're wrong. So I'll do both. But if you look at even the quarterback ratings, Mahomes is definitely the stronger quarterback. I mean, like Lawrence, he's definitely been improving. I mean, he has a 25-8 TD interception ratio. But Trevor Lawrence has shown that he can get hot at certain times. So this is really kind of one of those games where, like, if he just gets hot at the right time, anything can happen. And I would definitely have to agree with Ujan in the sense that it's really going to be Trevor Lawrence versus the Kansas City defense, and I think it's going to come down to that, because if you look at it the other way around, if you're looking at Patrick Mahomes versus the Jaguars defense, I think Mahomes, it's pretty safe to say, is going to have his way. For the Jags to really put up any kind of to have any kind of hope, they're gonna have to match it on the other end, and it's probably going to be a slugfest. I really think it's going to be a slugfest.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I just want to also mention one thing about the Jaguars. I think the key is going to be Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and Zay Jones. Those 3 last game, all 3 of them score touchdowns. And Ingram has been terrific since he left the Giants in the offseason. So and he joined the Jaguars. He's been like one of the most reliable tight ends for Lawrence. Obviously, he's not Kelsey, but he's good. And these guys, this trio basically will Jacksonville back in addition to Travis Etienne. So I think that's going to be the key performances. I think Jacksonville is going to have to take risks. They're not going to be able to settle for field goals against Kansas City. And Doug Peterson, of course, he called the Philly special. We all remember that in the Super Bowl. So they're going to be
not
aggressive in the red zone. Goals.
So like fourth down, like if it's like fourth down and more than and like 4th and 1, I see a lot of teams going for like 4th and 2, 4th and 3, and they're within within like the 25. Like you think they go for it in that situation instead of kicking the field goal? Like,
well, I think anything short of 4th and 5, I think I could see them going for it. 4th and 1, 4th and 2, I could definitely see them going for it. 4th and 5, probably not, unless it's late in the game. I mean, Patterson is pretty good, I guess. I don't. It really
also depends on. I would also say it depends on where in the field they are. Like, if it's like in a midfield, I think there's a 50-50 chance of them going for it. But of course, if you're in field goal range, you kick a field goal. But if you're like deep in your own territory, going for it on 4th and 5 is almost, the chances of that are pretty slim unless it's late in the game, right?
So, I meant to say he'd go for it more if they're in the red zone and it's like 4th and 2. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah,
like,
I see that.
For the touchdown.
That makes sense.
I mean, I don't think like midfield or at their own 30, they're going to go for like on 4th and 10. Like that's not going to happen. But I mean, in their own red zone, if it's like 4th and 1 at the 1 yard line, 100% they're going for it. This is the guy who caught the Philly special with Nick Foles catching a touchdown pass. You don't think he's going to dial up something after what we saw? So, okay, let's go with the score predictions, though. So, Ujan, you want to start first? Who's winning this game?
Well, I will point out that I was horribly wrong for the divisional round and the championship last year. Although I did get the Super Bowl right, I still remember that. I did predict the Rams over the Bengals when we knew the matchup, of course. So hopefully, if I can get more divisional picks right than I did last year, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think it's a safe bet. I'm going to say, the Chiefs defense isn't really like stellar per se, as Rowan said, like they're not they're like middle of the pack.
It's honestly not that good.
No, but they'll get to the quarterback, like, a few sacks here and there. But I think same goes with Jacksonville as well. We can't forget about the Josh Allen on the defensive side. So we'll talk about the offensive Josh Allen later. So I will say the Chiefs win. It'll be, and usually when it comes to Kansas City games in the playoffs, it's always like usually some 1-score game. You think about almost always. You think about when Brady went to Kansas City in the 2018 AFC Championship game and won in overtime, right?
Think about the Browns one. Do you remember that one in 2020?
Yeah, I remember that. I was going to point out last year's game against Buffalo, and that was in overtime, right? I'm seeing you see where I'm going with this. Like there are some patterns here. I can't remember the even
Cincinnati was overtime too.
Yeah, and I can't remember what was the game. What was the final score in the Tennessee Kansas City game from 2019? Like at least off the top of my head,
35-24, I think.
Okay, well, that's like I said, that's why I said almost. So I'm gonna say 34-31 Kansas City with Harrison Butker kicking a late field goal to win the game.
Oh, I mean that's definitely interesting. I mean, I definitely think that the Chiefs, as I mentioned, the Chiefs have a huge advantage on paper, but I think the Jags are going to make it interesting. If you look at betting wise, KC's a minus 455 to Jags plus 345. The over under is 53. The spread is 8.5. So if you put all that together, the expected score based on the betting lines is 30-22 Kansas City. I don't think it's going to be 30-22. I still think Kansas City is going to win, but I think it's going to be 26-23. I think it's going to be roughly about like as high scoring as what the betting markets are predicting. But I actually think that it's kind of going to be interesting in the sense that I think Kansas City is going to get out to a huge lead early on, and the Jags are going to slowly start mounting a comeback. And I think it's going to come down to a last-second field goal that the Jags miss. I really think that that's what it's going to come down to. 26-23.
Okay, so Ujan and Rohan both have 3-point Chiefs wins. I'm going with the Chiefs too, but I'm going 26-21. So pretty much in that ballpark, but I think it's going to be very close. For some reason, this reminds me a bit of that 2020 Cleveland versus Kansas City matchup when I think it was 22-17. And of course, unfortunately, Mahomes actually got injured in that game. He got a concussion. And Chad Henne actually finished that game. And actually, I remember he had a 4th and 1 to Tyreek Hill, which made me furious that the Browns allowed Chad Henne to seal that game. So I'm going with a 5-point outcome again. I think the Jaguars are a good team. They're going to be up on the rise, but they're not going to beat Kansas City. They're not at that level yet. So it's going to be Chiefs back at the AFC Championship game again. And the AFC Championship game, I guess. Oh, wait, no, because we'll still be at neutral site. I think it would be, right? Because
It could be at a neutral site if Buffalo beat Cincinnati. Then if that happens, it would be Buffalo, Kansas City in Atlanta.
okay, because I was just about to say the Arrowhead Stadium once again, but then I realized it might not be Arrowhead. It might be Atlanta. So okay, so that's our matchup. All of us picked the Chiefs. Not really a big surprise, but let's go to the next one now. The Giants and the Eagles. That's going to be the Saturday night matchup. Giants, of course, beat the Vikings 31-24. The Eagles did win both matchups this season. Week 14, Eagles win 48-22. Wait, hold on. I'm just giving the overview. Week 14, 48-22, Eagles win at MetLife. Jalen Hurts was outstanding that day. 217 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 carries for 77 yards. Basically, Miles Sanders also had 17 carries for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Eagles actually that day sacked the Giants quarterbacks 7 times, and Brandon Graham had 3 sacks. So overall, that was the first pretty good matchup. The second matchup, though, on Week 18 is kind of the one I want to look at, though, because that is more recent. And Jalen Hurts, since that first matchup, has a sprained shoulder now. In that one, Eagles win 22-16 at Lincoln Financial Field. However, Daniel Jones actually didn't start that game. It was Davis Webb, the backup. And Hurts didn't look that great. 20 of 35, 229 yards, threw an interception. So really kind of hard to say. And the Giants are kind of rolling right now. I mean, they had a pretty big win against Minnesota. Daniel Jones was terrific. Saquon Barkley. Isaiah Hodgins coming off of the waiver wire, the practice squad, to be the Giants leading receiver. I mean, that is very impressive. So Darius Slayton, of course, he had the big drop at the end, but I mean, he was still very good. And yeah, I don't know. This is going to be a very interesting matchup to me because I think if Jalen Hurts was healthy, you'd probably pick the Eagles easily, but he's not healthy. And the Giants are rolling now. So let's talk about this a little bit. Like, how much of an impact do you think Jalen Hurts' injury will show in this game? Rohan, let's start with you.
Really much. I mean, yes, that's a factor, but the Eagles are just so much stronger. I mean, yeah, the Giants have had some like recent success, and they've kind of had a knack of taking down successful teams. I think we all know a thing or two about that. But that aside, I must say that the Eagles are such a strong team. 14-3. And of course, if you look at the individual QB ratings, I mean, Daniel Jones 92.5 rating, 101.5 rating for Jalen Hurts. The defensive statistics advantage Eagles, offensive statistics advantage Eagles. Offensively, 20.1 to 22 points per game. Eagles over the Giants have the offensive edge. Defensive points allowed, 21.9 for the Giants, 20.2 for the Eagles, so advantage Eagles over there.
I will just say one thing, Rohan. Be careful about the defensive points allowed, because I don't know, does that count like defensive touchdowns allowed? When you're talking about total
That's just points allowed. Points allowed.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with that.
Opponent points per game.
Well, that's the thing, right? That also could impact like defensive touchdowns that the offense allowed, right? So that doesn't actually. So the points allowed stat is like usually relatively good, but be careful with that because that also doesn't like eliminate like the touchdowns that the opposing defense scored essentially.
But that said, I mean, as much as I wanted to give this one to the Giants, because of the recent success, and of course their reputation for kind of being the team that upsets the favorite. They kind of have both of those things working in their favor. And of course the Eagles coming off of a bye. I mean, anytime you have a team coming off of a bye, you risk rust. And of course, since the Eagles did kind of like come out of nowhere this year, I think it's fair to say that I don't even think Eagles fans would think that I don't even think a lot of Eagles fans really expected them to be this successful this year. So I really was tempted to say that the Giants would make a run for it, but the Eagles are just the fundamentals are just overwhelming. I mean, obviously I haven't gotten to the prediction, but I'm pretty sure you can all tell what it is.
Yeah, before we get there, Ujan, just wanted to hear your thoughts. What are sort of the key matchups you're going to be, excuse me, what are the key matchups you're going to be looking for in this matchup? Like, what chances do the Giants have, do you think, in getting this upset?
I think they have a pretty decent chance at the first matchup that was they got yeah I think they just got kind of blown out of the stadium, if you will, by Jalen Hurts. I mean, now, and I think it's worth noting in the second matchup, the Giants couldn't go anywhere, so like they couldn't go. They were already locked into the 6th seed. So I understand why they ended up not playing Daniel Jones, and you know, I and like I'm guessing for some of their stars, I didn't see a ton of that game, but they look sharp against Minnesota. Like, going there against a team they lost to in the regular season on a last second 61-yard field goal. So it was expected that game would be close, and now and I don't think many folks are expecting them to like compete with Philadelphia, given how well Philadelphia has been this season, and it's also at the link. But Jalen Hurts is not 100%. Granted, he does have Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and their running game is great. I think the year 2 to year 3 of Jalen Hurts has been phenomenal. He's he's a threat with his arm, and he's a threat on the ground. So it kind of reminds me of like a 2019 Lamar Jackson. Like, maybe sure Lamar was more of a threat on the ground, but he can at least make the throws, and he has like star receivers who can catch the ball. Or this time you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like I said, I would also mention Dallas Goedert in there too. So I think it's more the Eagles run offense versus the Giants run defense. That's what I'll be looking at. I think that's where the game's gonna be won or lost.
All right. So yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting. The Eagles do have a couple injuries to note. Avonte Maddox, the cornerback has already been ruled out, and they're going to really need AJ Brown and Devontae Smith to have big games and probably really go after the Giants' run defense, which I don't think is very good. So I think that's going to be the key for the Eagles. This is definitely a game they should win, and I'm going to actually pick them to win this game, 24-17. I think it's going to be one of those like hard fought games. I think it will be close, but I think the Eagles are the better team and they'll win this matchup. So that's my prediction.
I'm going 23-14 Eagles.
I'm going to say 28-23 Eagles.
Ujan, knowing your luck this year, you'll get all the divisional round matchups right up to the Super Bowl, and you'll get that wrong this year. So
let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay, yeah. So now let's move on to Sunday. So basically, the first matchup, the Bengals at Bills. Finally, of course, after what happened a few weeks ago with Damar Hamlin, fortunately, he is okay now. He is back and recovering. We all know what happened on that Monday night matchup, but we will now be seeing the Bengals and the Bills play each other. And the Bengals beat the Ravens 24-17. The Bills beat the Dolphins 34-31. And I'll be honest with you, I think both performances were very underwhelming. I think I expected Buffalo to really dominate Miami, and they really struggled. I mean, with a third string quarterback, they really struggled. Josh Allen, I don't think he played that well. 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, and a fumble, which he lost for a touchdown. So it was very unimpressive for me. And same with the Bengals. Going up against Tyler Huntley, it really took Sam Hubbard basically scoring a 98-yard touchdown to beat the Ravens, because if Tyler Huntley doesn't just like reach the ball over and just allow any Bengals defender to just slap it out of his hand, if he just probably just runs it in or gives it to J.K. Dobbins, the Ravens probably win that matchup, I think, because the Bengals were very unimpressive too. So this is 2 teams that I think are just had a very underwhelming week. And I think it's just going to be very interesting to see. The defense for the Bills, was pretty bad, honestly. Against Skylar Thompson, you did okay, but I don't know. It was just a very disappointing performances on both sides. I expected more out of both teams. I did pick Cincinnati to win, but it was 19-17. So I pretty much expected them to struggle against Baltimore, but that was just very lucky in a way. Like, I don't know. Ujan, like, you were laughing at that. Do you think, like, do you really think the
Yeah,
Bengals got a
I-
break
well-
by Tyler Huntley just like exposing the ball for like any Bengals player to just slap out of his hand? Like, do you think that was a break?
And that's the part I was laughing. Yeah, that's the part I was laughing about. You don't stretch the ball out unless you have like really good reach. Like it's the ball's at the 2-yard line and you're trying to reach. And of course the ball gets, I remember Dak Prescott did that. I think it was like week 4, week 5 against the Patriots.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. I actually
it
thought
was
about that
something-
too. Good.
Yeah.
Someone else
so,
brought that up.
I just found it kind of funny that, not only, it's one thing to at least try and, like get the ball over the plane and, the ball gets swatted away. Like, I'll give Cincinnati credit for doing that. But at the same time, like, the TV cameras are showing Tyler Huntley, like saying like, oh, he reached, like he was putting his hands up, like he scored a touchdown. He was nowhere close.
And I love how Mike Tirico was like, nope, not even close. The commentator was like,
Yeah,
nope.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I was shocked when that happened. Like, it was pretty obvious. Like, the formation they had, like, they had the 2 tight ends and the running back, like literally right behind the quarterback. It's like there's only like one option you have at that point, like with that kind of formation. So, and I thought like I think it was like what, a 2nd and goal or something like that. If I
It's
recall
not the
correctly.
1-yard line. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
what type
but,
of
like,
QB sneak you're calling at that point. Just like,
Yeah, but I was just
run
trying to
it in.
recall what. Yeah, I was just trying to recall what down it was. So like, even if you get from the 2-yard line to the 1-yard line, like even if it's like 3rd down, right, and you get it to the 1-yard line, 4th and goal from the 1 and a tie game, Harbaugh was doing that thing against Buffalo, and granted they lost, but at least you're being aggressive, and that I think that was definitely 4 down territory. I just feel like that was the wrong call from Tyler Huntley's point of view, unfortunately, and it cost them the game. Granted, they did have a chance to at least send the game to overtime, and there was the drop and the Hail Mary. It was in the hands of the Baltimore receiver, and those kind of Hail Marys, they don't get completed that often, so you couldn't really expect them to make that catch on the last play of the game.
Also, the Bengals, like, I mean, they also had a fumble lost, right? Hayden Hurst lost a fumble. So, I mean, they were very sloppy. They were very fortunate. I think both teams were very fortunate that they were able to escape with a win. I mean, both were very, like, shaky wins, I would say. So, I mean, I guess fortunately now they play each other. So both teams basically had shaky wins, and now they get to play each other. So I guess one of them is going to get a break, I think. But yeah, I mean, well, it's just wanted to welcome a Nirban in. We actually talked about the first 2 matchups. So before we dive into this one, do you just want to give your predictions for the Giants, Eagles, and the other one, the Chiefs, Jaguars, just before we dive into this matchup?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, apologies for coming on late. Glad you have some good discussion going on. So really quickly, when it comes to Eagles Giants, I do have to say the Giants, of course, impressed me, and I think stunned a lot of people, but maybe not as many when it came to their win over the Minnesota Vikings. And I just do think they're going to be coming up against some tough customers with the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, you guys might have mentioned Jalen Hurts' status of his shoulder going in, and I mean, he even mentioned in a press conference that he's expecting that the defense is going to come for him and potentially try to expose that shoulder injury. So we're going to see how that affects his mobility, not only his mobility, but also maybe his decision making, how well the O-line can protect him. He's been behind a really one of the best, like the leading O-lines in the NFL. So if there's any team if there's any O-line you want to be behind in his situation, it's the one he currently has. So I do have to say I'm predicting the Eagles are going to take this one. And I'm predicting it's going to be a pretty close game because the Giants have shown that they have the capability to do that. So I'm going to say maybe 21-18 Eagles win. In terms of the other game, which is going to be Chiefs Jaguars, I mean, I just have to say, like, I kind of see some Cincinnati Bengals vibes from last year with this team, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, after that game, after that come out against the Chargers, I don't really know what to say. I mean, after throwing 4 interceptions, having like a 0 QBR in the first half, to suddenly turning around and doing that, I mean, that's got to put some teams on notice. And if there's something I do feel that there's something special about this team. I'm actually predicting a shock Jaguars upset in this game. I'm going to say that it's going to be 28-24 Jaguars. And, I will point out that a lot of people didn't give the Bengals a shot last year at all. And we all saw how that happened. So, I do see some magic with this team. I think Trevor Lawrence is really coming up hot at the right time this season. He's really heated up to end the season. And we shouldn't forget that he's easily, top 10 QB in the league at this point. Maybe he could even crack like top 5 or 6. So that's going to be my prediction.
Okay, awesome. So glad we got him up to speed. Okay, so yeah, let's move back to the Bengals and the Bills. Obviously, yeah, we were basically talking about kind of the poor decision making by the Ravens last week. But yeah, Rohan, like, what are your thoughts on this sort of? Do you think
with the Ravens Bengals one, that's one of the divisional the wild card matchups that I got wrong. But it turns out I wasn't really wrong by much, and it really could have gone either way. I would say that the Bills Dolphins one was probably the more surprising outcome. The more surprising matchup, though, not surprising in terms of the outcome, but I was really surprised with how much the Bills struggled. Especially when you considered how the Dolphins were not really that strong to begin with. They had recently lost to a struggling Patriots team, and then of course they come into Buffalo and they nearly beat the Bills in their own yard, which I would have thought was unheard of. And I would say that it's probably like pretty inexcusable, like on Josh Allen and the Bills offense's part, for really not like blowing it open really early on. But that said, though, I think the Bills have shown that they're capable of learning, and I think they're going to go back and watch film on that game repeatedly, even if they did win. And when going up against a team like Cincinnati, they've had some prior exposure. But obviously, I think this team is still rallying behind DeMar Hamlin. I can't, no matter how much you look at the game itself, I can't help but think that that's still in the back of the mind for all the players. And especially when you're going up against the same opponent, when that injury initially happened, you got to think that's got to play into the Bills' psyche. So I think that I would say that even though both teams, the Bengals and the Bills, had weak showings in the wild card rounds, they still survived and they're still here. And one of them will move on, one of them will go home. But I think that that I can't not think that for the Bills that this is just their year. It's hard not to think that, given everything that's happened. And of course, I did say this at the beginning of the season as well, because the Bills just looked so strong. I did pick them to win it all at the beginning of the season, and I'm still sticking with that for now. For them to win it all. And with that said, I think you should know what my prediction for that matchup is.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, just go ahead with your prediction.
Yeah, I'm gonna go, but I think it's gonna be lower scoring because I think both offenses have struggled. But I think it's gonna be I'm gonna go with 21-13 Bills.
Wow. Well, I guess it's possible because the Bengals did just score 17 on offense against the Ravens. So yeah, I mean, okay, so yeah, I'm actually flip-flopping a bit. I don't know. I think both teams are really good, and this might be the matchup of the week, I think. So I'm gonna go. This is a tough one, but I do think the Buffalo sentiment is pretty strong here. So I'll probably say the Bills win 37-31 in overtime. Josh Allen wins the coin flip, 80-yard pass to Nyheim Hines to win the game. There.
Remember,
going high scoring.
It's the new overtime rule. So both, if it does go to overtime, then both teams get possession of the ball.
Well, not if they got a touchdown, though, right?
No, it doesn't matter if it's a touchdown.
All right, okay. One modification. Incoming kickoff, Bengals fumble it, it's over. There you go. All right, anyways, yeah, okay, there you go. I corrected it. So 37-31 Bills in overtime. or I guess 38-31 because they would kick the extra point, right? So, okay.
I don't even know what that point. I actually think that this is going to be really tight. Buffalo's been at this stage each of the last 2 years. Of course, they faltered to Kansas City, and both times that was in Kansas City, right? I think the 2 seed is like very underrated in the sense that you get 2 home games versus, since the NFL changed the playoffs format, the 2 seed doesn't get a bye, but they get an extra home game, which I think is going severely unnoticed. We always talk about, one team getting a bye, and that's actually opened up the playing field a lot more because, last year the Rams and Bengals were 2 4 seeds. So, and the year before the Bucs were a wild card team. So I think, I honestly think that, the seeding when it comes to the playoffs, it doesn't really matter. I mean, home field advantage helps, but I don't think it's a big game changer. Now, granted, I do think home field advantage will play a role because I think Buffalo, it's always the elements are much different in Buffalo compared to any other stadium. I think, when you talk about like the swirling wind, of course, who knows what the weather conditions will be in Orchard Park on Sunday.
That's what I thought too, until the Dolphins came in and almost beat him.
Well, that also being said, like, the thing is Buffalo went out to like an early 17-0 lead, and then Josh Allen had 2 interceptions in 5 throws, and just kind of wheeled Miami back. It's not that Miami was great. They came back, they made it like it was 20-17 at halftime, but they only scored 1 touchdown. They had 3 field goals. So in the second half, they only had one offensive touchdown, sorry. So I don't really think it's that Miami was great. I think their defense kept them in it, which is why the scoreline was much closer. Now, Cincinnati's defense is good, and their offense is much better than Miami's. But, this kind of reminds me of the Baltimore-Buffalo game in the 2020 divisional round, where, it was Lamar Jackson, and there was I think there was a lot of crazy win, and Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals, which is like unheard of. And it was like a 3-3 game, and then Lamar Jackson throws a pick 6, and Josh Allen gets 1 touchdown. So it was kind of something tells me it's going to be some sort of low-scoring game like that. But I don't think it's going to be like a 17-3. I think it's going to be Buffalo 21, Cincinnati 19. Cincinnati misses an extra point early in the game, and then they have a chance to convert for 2 and they miss. That's how I see it going.
I mean, missing extra points seems like the new thing, right? After what we just saw the Cowboys
Dallas
do.
Wow, that was a crazy.
That was unbelievable.
Also, just worth mentioning about McPherson, the Bengals kicker, he missed 3 extra points against the Patriots earlier this season when the teams played on Christmas Eve. So that was a weird game overall because Nick Folk also missed all his kicks. So that actually ended up costing the Patriots that game because they were down by 4.
There was also a lot of wind at Gillette Stadium. I think it must be like a northeastern part of the United States thing. There's so much wind going on in the winter. I think it's just more so in Orchard Park.
Yep. Yeah, no. So, okay. So 3 Bengals so far. Oh, sorry, 3 Bills. What about you and your man?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting game. I mean, the home field for Bills definitely supports them. I do want to note a couple things to look out for. Joe Burrow was sacked 4 times against the Baltimore Ravens, which is, I think, the first time he had more than 3 sacks since week 8. So they're going to have to really be concerned about that coming up against the Bills pass rush. But on the other hand, I mean, we talked about Josh Allen's being a little loose with the football there. And it is important to note that actually this year, for all of his incredible performance, Josh Allen definitely took a step back in terms of fumbles. He was actually 3rd in the league in regular season in terms of fumbles. And that reared up again here. And the reason I bring that up is actually because the Bengals defense is actually they're actually 11th in the league, so top half in terms of forcing fumbles. They forced 14 of those and recovered 10 in the regular season. So I do see like a potential for those mistakes, like Ujan mentioned, like if those mistakes do come up again, I do think that Cincinnati Bengals are poised more to actually punish the Bills than the Dolphins were, even though of course they end up getting it a lot closer. So for that reason, actually, coupled with the fact that I do think Joe Burrow's repeatedly shown his ability to play in big moments this season, coming up against Patrick Mahomes, for example. And of course, prior to the hugely unfortunate turns of events with DeMar Hamlin in that game, and of course, we're all very happy that he's being discharged a few weeks ago. But around that time, I mean, you remember on the very opening drive that Joe Burrow marched down the field against the Buffalo Bills, albeit in Cincinnati, to score that opening drive to T. Higgins. So I think with that triple threat that they have of Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, I just feel like, and as well as their excellent ability to scheme Jamar Chase open. I mean, we saw him, like, how many times have we seen defense try to lock up Jamar Chase? And then in this game, he got 19 targets. So against the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm predicting a shootout game here, but I really do see the Cincinnati Bengals being able to pull off this one here. I think they're uniquely poised to take advantage of some of Josh Allen's vulnerabilities, and really their offense is just too explosive to ignore for me. So I'm going to go for a really high shootout match that ends in regular time, but it's going to be 34-31 to the Bengals.
Okay, interesting. All right, so I guess let's move on to the last matchup now, San Francisco-Dallas. Obviously a rematch from last year. We have to acknowledge, of course, Dak Prescott, for some reason, decided to rush on the final play when he had no timeouts. He did get to the 49ers 20-yard line or something, but of course time ran out, and yeah, that was a disaster at the end. But I mean, now that he gets another chance, this time in San Francisco. And of course the Cowboys, they destroyed the Buccaneers 31-14, but it was only 31-14 because the Dallas kicker could not hit any extra points until the last one. Brett Maher missed his first 4 extra points, so really was 5 touchdowns. Dak Prescott was incredible. This was the game of his life, really. 305 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he also scored the other touchdown on the ground. he was involved. He was a player of the game. And really the only blemish I can really point to was Maher, who missed those 4 extra points. But, overall, the Cowboys defense really hounded Brady. Brady had a nice stat line in the end if you just looked at the stats, but he was not very impactful at all. One of his touchdowns came at the end of the game, essentially, when it was over. So really, it didn't matter. The 49ers, they're very good. 41-23 win over Seattle. It was close at halftime, 17-16. I think Seattle actually led, but then the 49ers in the second half basically just took over. Deebo Samuel had a 74-yard touchdown. Brock Purdy has been terrific. So this is going to be the matchup I'm going to be very interested to see. I think this could also be the game of the week. Brock Purdy just continues to basically make a case that he should be the starter full time next year. So yeah, let's talk about this matchup then, the last one. So what do you sort of see? What can Dallas learn, I guess, from last year to sort of put into effect this year against the 49ers? Let's start with the nearby.
So number one, better clock management. That is the biggest lesson I think anyone with a pair of eyes can take away from last year's playoff game. But that being said, this Niners team is a little different in that compared to last year, in that, with Brock Purdy and in the small sample size we've seen of him, he hasn't just been a game manager. He's been actively taking part in their victories, right? 18 for 30, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns is not a game manager. And that's the stat line he put up against Seattle Seahawks. And these were useful yards, right? This wasn't throwing up 200 in garbage time. So that's one thing that I think the Dallas Cowboys have to look at. And of course, we're going to see how well Micah Parsons is going to be able to get at him, because one of the reasons they're so successful against Tom Brady was for a couple of reasons. One is that you have to throw over 60 times because the Buccaneers cannot run the football. They just couldn't do that all this season, and that carried out to be true in the playoffs. The forced runs were 60 times. They never respected any of his screens or play actions because they knew they wouldn't run the ball. And Micah Parsons repeatedly just broke through a really shattered offensive line and just terrorized Brady all night. So You look at the Niners on the other hand. I mean, you have to respect every part of their game. Is phenomenal on offense. Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel are just elite rushers. Throwing Elijah Mitchell whenever they want. Receiving, you have those players, those Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. They're really spoiled for choice in terms of what they can do with the ball. And that's going to be, I think, a big challenge for the Dallas Cowboys because you can't just throw the kitchen sink at the QB here because it's just a fundamentally more complete and just a far more talented offense than whatever they played against Tampa Bay. So I agree with you that Dak Prescott had a career game. I think he was phenomenal. I think the question for me with the Cowboys this season has always been consistency, right? For every game that we've seen like this, we've seen 26-6 or what it was against the Washington Commanders. It's really difficult to know which team is going to be showing up against San Francisco 49ers. And while I think this is certainly like a huge statement win, I just don't see them. I really see the Niners as the best team in the NFC as of now. So I really see them going away with this game, but taking it pretty close. I don't think the Niners are going to put up 41 against the Dallas defense. It's probably going to be a little more slow scoring. I'm predicting 24-16 Niners win.
Okay, Ujan, what are your picks?
Well, I'm going to start with my key matchup here, and I think it's going to be the Dallas pass rush against the 49ers O-line. It's easy to see, when everyone talked about, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, they're all great receivers, like for their respective positions, but they need to do the dirty work, when Dallas dials up the blitz. Michael Parsons just had a field day against the Buccaneers offensive line and getting to Brady, right? So, and one way the 49ers can, beat the blitz, screen pass. But then again, you have playmakers on the outside, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I would even argue I don't know if Jawan Jennings is still active, or I think he's certainly a threat, in my opinion, at least. So, San Francisco has playmakers outside, and if they don't pass the ball, Christian McCaffrey is a great running back too. So I think it's for me, it's in the trenches.
And Ujan, John Jennings was limited in practice today, so it looks like he's day to day as of now.
Okay, well, if he does play, if he doesn't, well, that's at least one less. That's one less guy for Dallas to worry about. Hopefully, Jawan Jennings is okay. I think in overall, San Francisco's offense is very high powered. You could have Brock Purdy in there. You could almost put it seems as though you can put anybody in that quarterback and they're going to put up great numbers at this rate. Remember Brock Purdy was the Mr. Irrelevant in this past draft. Maybe if San Francisco had Skylar Thompson, then he might have had similar numbers. Let's not get carried away here, but I'm going to say that San Francisco wins this 34-24.
Wow, San Francisco is a very, very good team, and I think they've demonstrated that they can play well with the third string quarterback, and I think I probably don't disagree with anyone over here by saying that Brock Purdy is making the case to be the starter. They've really shown it. They had a strong showing against the Seahawks, beating them 41-23 over there. This time when they're going up against this Cowboys team, this is a Cowboys team that I really didn't expect to be here because I expected them to lose to the Bucs, but obviously we're here, right? And after not getting that matchup right, I do have to kind of take another look at the Cowboys and see, well, what did they do right against the Bucs? I think what they were able to do is run up the score pretty early on, and one of their weak spots I would have to say would be special teams. Of course, all those missed extra points, but it didn't really hurt them that game because they ran up the score so much pretty early in the game. And of course, going back to the clock management issue, I think if it's close and the Cowboys need some sort of final drive to tie it up or take a late lead or something like that, I think that's definitely advantage Niners. But if this matchup kind of goes anyway similar to the way that the Cowboys played against the Bucs, I think it's massive advantage Cowboys. I mean, Dak Prescott he had a strong showing. against the Bucks, and I really think that this is going to be a real good back and forth. That's not to say that the defenses aren't going to play a role, but I really think it's going to come down to the two quarterbacks. But after what I saw against the Bucks and how the Cowboys surprised me, despite the fact that the Niners are a good team, I think I got to give this one to the Cowboys. I'm going 31-25 on this one, Cowboys.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, have you guys ever heard of the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how it's like sunny California, right? So I think the 49ers are going to bring some of that sunshine to Philadelphia a week from now, because I'm picking the 49ers to beat the Cowboys 34-31. Robbie Gould with a game-winning field goal in the divisional round for the second straight season to send San Francisco, this time to Philadelphia. So that's my prediction. So
We'll have more rushing yards, Tony Pollard or Christian McCaffrey.
probably McCaffrey, but I think it might be close. I mean, Pollard had like 77, but McCaffrey gets over 100 usually. So I would go with McCaffrey. I mean, that's just what makes the 49ers offense so potent. You have McCaffrey and Debo and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Like that's like a Pro Bowl offense caliber. Like it's just unfair. So I mean, I don't know. It's just too much. I don't really think like any team. I think any team remaining in the playoffs is going to have a hard time matching up against San Francisco, except maybe Kansas City, because Mahomes seems like he has the San Francisco defense's number. But if they get there, then I think that's a good problem to have. But yeah, I'm going 49ers 34, Cowboys 31. And before we end the show, Tom Brady, we should talk about him a little bit. Just is he going to retire or not? Do you think he's coming back next year? Because this is going to be like a fun talking point now until he actually makes a decision. Actually, even if he retires again, no one's going to believe it now, because they'll always be talking about him. He's basically going to become the new Gronk if he does retire again, because every time there's like an injury, someone's going to inquire about him. But yeah, do you think he's going to be playing week 1 somewhere next year?
Yes. I don't think I really. Yeah. I mean,
He'll be playing week 1, except he'll be playing fantasy.
I think he's, there's like at the end of the day, you look at the QB situation around the league, there's going to be at least a couple teams, and the Las Vegas Raiders, of course, emerging as the top candidates because of, well, the fact that they have a really stacked offense outside of quarterback. And then meanwhile, I do want to highlight that the other big name whose situation is murky is Mr. Aaron Rodgers on the Green Bay Packers. We know, his whole song and dance, picking petals to a flower. Will I retire? Will I not retire? So we'll see what the verdict is there. But maybe he's going to compete for the Raiders spot too, I think. But it just makes a lot of sense on paper. I mean, Josh McDaniels, Tom Brady, there's a lot of history there. You look at Devontae Adams. I mean, the Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. It makes a lot of sense for him to go there. And Tom Brady's in win now mode from now until that day he retires, because he's not going to wait around for building a team. And I think the Raiders look like the team that A, most needs like a replacement quarterback, and B, is most, out of all of those, is most primed to actually like take Tom Brady on a deep run. So I'd say I don't think he's going to retire. I think he's probably going to try to go there.
I don't think he's retiring. We thought it was gonna. I actually thought like he would do so after he won Super Bowl 55, but he came back for another year, and boy, did he prove me wrong. He was it just turned out we thought it would be a year late. Now we think it's perhaps 2 years late. Because you go from winning a Super Bowl, then you become a 2 seed after an amazing regular season. Now you're a 4 seed with an under 500 team. And this time he's a free agent for the second time in his career. So I do think that he will play, and I think it'll be out west at Allegiant Stadium or wherever Las Vegas plays their first away game in week 1, depending on the schedule.
Will the Raiders fans finally forgive him for the tuck rule then, if he plays for the Raiders?
Depends on how he does, I think.
True. Yeah, actually, yeah, I don't think he's retiring yet. And I think this like type of game is definitely not how he wants to end his career. Like 31-14, getting blown out at home. So I think he's going to take some time to make a decision on where he wants to go. I think Tampa is still a possibility because he basically has all the leverage now, and he can basically ask them to fire Todd Bowles as the coach and basically bring in whoever he wants as the coach. So I think Tampa still has an option because I think Tampa at this point can basically make any decision to appease him. So it wouldn't shock me if he returns to Tampa because I think moving to another new city, even if he knows McDaniels, it's just a new place, right? So he's actually built something pretty nice in Tampa. I mean, I know this year wasn't good, but
There are rumors about Miami potentially. He'll stay in Florida and he'll get to play the Patriots more often.
yeah, I mean, Miami is an option too. It really depends. I mean, either way, like in the AFC West, he has to deal with Mahomes, right? And Justin Herbert. Whereas in the AFC East, it's really just Josh Allen at this point. So, like, I mean, I guess it's just depending on how he wants to sort of play it out. I mean, I think Vegas makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think either team makes sense, but if you're really looking at Tampa, or Miami, or like Vegas, I mean, Tampa still has two really good wide receivers. So at that point, then it's like, why do you leave when you're in a pretty easy division, all things considered, right? I mean, in that division, it's really just him at that point. Whereas in Buffalo, you have to deal with Josh Allen. Or in the AFC East, you have to deal with Josh Allen twice. And then in the AFC West, you have to deal with Herbert and Mahomes. So, I mean, it would be the optics of that too, right? So, and maybe Russell Wilson, who's rejuvenated with a new coach. So, I would still probably say, like, if he really wants to compete, the NFC South is probably the place he wants to be at this point, just being realistic. Tampa probably has the resources to just do whatever he wants. Hire a new coach, bring in some new free agents. Like, that's probably the best course for him at this point. I don't know if he's going to do it, but that's probably what he wants to do. If he wants to, like, I mean, get an easy division, get a home playoff game, and improve the team. I mean, that's probably the place to do it. Not going to Miami. Anyways, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure knowing Brady, he's just going to love the attention. He's just going to want to play this out till March. And we'll see. Yeah, him and Aaron Rodgers are going to have
he's going to want to keep playing until he like just completely can't play anymore.
Yeah, pretty much.
If that's an indication, he's probably going to stick around until nobody wants him. But that's really not the way a career should end. I think he should have ended his career when he was still flying high. This is not how a career.
I mean, I still think he can play at the high level. I think this year I don't know what happened in Tampa, which is why I probably do think he will probably go to Vegas, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, Vegas is more in a direct position to get him because they also have McDaniels. Miami doesn't really have any connections to him right now, do they? So I don't think so. I don't think any of the coaches are there. Yeah, I don't think there's any of the players are there. So Vegas makes all the sense in that sense. Like McDaniels, and they also need a quarterback. Derek Carr is not coming back next season for sure. So, I mean, I'm sure Miami will make a play for him, but I think Vegas is probably the more lucrative option. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, yeah, big slate of games coming up. And yeah, we'll be back again next weekend to preview the championship round matchups. We'll see who's playing then. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Yeah.
One last quick point. The Dolphins do have Eric Rowe. So, I mean, there is some old chemistry there, I'm sure. So maybe he could recruit him. But
yeah, I'm sure Brady loves the guy who got torched in Super Bowl 52. Nothing better than that. But yeah, anyways, let's we will be back again next weekend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. And yeah, we'll just enjoy the week of games. I think there'll be a good slate of games. I don't know if it will be as epic as last year when all 4 of the games literally ended on the final play, but I think it'll be a good one. But until then, enjoy the games, and yeah, we'll be back again next weekend. We're the experts after all. So, I mean, you want to listen to us.
All right, peace.